back. So Nathan, you were the guru. You know, I didn't even have to climb up the mountain to talk to, and you don't have the beard either. So
no, I don't.
You don't.
The
setting isn't right. Instead of being on top of a snowy mountain and us wearing snow clothes, we've got a drum set in the background.
Yeah, well, we're in my studio right now just because we were here.
So. We were here. Yeah. So tell us about the 3 R's, and then we'll start down the road of what respect.
Okay. So Garth mentioned earlier that the 3 R's are respect, respond, redirect. And it seems very, very simple to talk about these 3, and it is by design. We're going to talk about respect first because this is the universal starting place for all of this. There's no objection that can be overcome. There's no true understanding that can come without respect for where the other individual is. When we talk about respect, I don't mean I respect you and I'm going to bow. That's not what I'm talking about. Respect for other people is just a quality of humanity that we all ought to have, and we all ought to respect other people's boundaries, other people's upbringing, other people's culture, their feelings, their politics, everything else, right?
You know, and I can tell that I'm going to use this example that I kind of brought up right. in the church setting as an example of how to do this, because again, it doesn't matter whether it's church or work or whatever, but this is the one where I actually used it. So in this case, this guy was being difficult. He had a bit of an attitude, and I think he wanted to prove he was in the room.
Right.
And I'm thinking if I would have ignored him and moved on, it would not have done what he needed.
Would not have done it.
So, hence the need for his being respected at the moment.
Yeah, so when we talk about respect, we're talking about our ability to understand that what this person is doing, what they're saying or how they're acting, is based on something that to them is so real it justifies almost any behavior, whether that behavior is good or bad. So for example, I was training a bunch of people in New York. These were Fortune 500 clients, huge companies. In fact, let's see, I can think of a handful of individuals that were from probably 2 of the largest companies on earth. And during that session, one guy got really upset, and I would be explaining, now to accomplish such and such, you would need to handle it this way, and I'd start going through the process, and I could hear him grumble. He's in the back of the room. There were about 15 people in the room. And I ignored it for the time and went on to explain the second concept, and as soon as I began to explain it, you could hear him again. Now this was in New York. People aren't super standoffish there. They kind of say what they think, right?
New Yorkers, they're known for their manners and kindness.
That's right, for tiptoeing always.
Yes.
Or for being very direct. It's one of the 2. Anyway, so in the session, I let this go 3 or 4 times until it was starting to become annoying to the other people in the room. And a 3rd time, I said something, and he started in again, and somebody said, "Would you shut up?" He said, "You shut up!" Another guy's like, "Both of you shut up!" We're in New York. I was ready for the fisticuffs to begin, right? But here's the deal. The guy was being a jerk. By definition, he was impolite. It was improper what he was doing. He wasn't handling it in a way that was helpful for him or anyone else. He was being a jerk. Here's the deal. Respect doesn't say, I respect that he's a jerk. Respect says, I have to respect that for him. Despite the way that he's acting right now, this must be so real and so compelling that at least subconsciously it justifies his current behavior. So I have to respect that this is real to him. And it doesn't mean he's justified. But the only way that I can handle that circumstance, the only way that I can actually respond in a way that's helpful and will resolve anything, is to begin there. And then, and this is probably the most important concept of all, I have to feed this person what he's hungry for.
Yeah, and that's where it gets fun for me. So I'm thinking, I just passed, I don't want to say, so I won't say. And let's say that you're the realtor and you don't work for and you actually have one of those evil 6% commissions, and you walk into somebody and their first thing is I hate you because you're not and you're just trying to take all of my money.
Right.
So the first response isn't, well, sucks and X, Y, and Z, because that's not respect.
No. That doesn't respect what they are. And that's not the thing they're hungry for. See, we have a tendency all of the time when we're trying to respond to a comment that somebody makes, that, especially if it's negative, but even if it's just inaccurate or it's skewed in some way, when we seek to respond to those, we very often try and respond with information that would counter what they said. So for example, somebody says to you, well, I think real estate should be done without commissions because I think commissions are basically evil. You guys are just, you're just taking money off the backs of the poor. It's hard to respect that one. You gotta respect it. You gotta respect that for them that's real and stuff, okay?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the first things that I learned from you is if somebody comes at you with something, 99.5 times out of 100, regardless of how ridiculous it is, it's
Right.
true to them.
It's true to them. And usually if they come at you with something, it's not about that thing. For example, they say, I think realtors who get commissions are just feeding off the backs of the poor.
Uh-huh.
Responding by talking about, well, actually, we're not feeding off the backs of the poor because
Uh-huh.
that's not what they need. They're actually hungry for something else. So if we feed them a response to that's primarily information, that's not going to satisfy the hunger. Somebody comes in and says, I hate this countertop, I want granite counters, only granite counters are good enough for me. If we talk about the difference between Corian and granite and Formica and everything else, that's actually not what they're hungry for. What they're looking for is some sense of equity and justice and feeling like they're getting treated fairly. So if I talk to them about information, well, actually, statistically, that's not true because more homes sell. That's not really going to solve the problem. What they have to have is a response that feels to them like you respect where they're coming from and you understand what they're thinking, and you have a desire to treat them with fairness and equity and make everything come out right. That's what they're hungry for. So that's what you have to feed them. Very often, giving them conflicting information or information that would combat their previously held opinion has the opposite effect of
Yeah,
what you want.
I'm just thinking if you're the realtor and I'm the client, and I say, hey, you're charging me too much money, or why shouldn't I use that big green sign? And you come back at me with facts. Now that's a sword fight.
That's a sword fight.
And if it's a sword fight, then you're the competitor, and I'm so much less likely to hire the guy that I'm doing battle with.
We don't hire our antagonists very often. So I can't be the antagonist. I have to be the person that's standing on the same side with them and saying, I understand how you feel because, right? And we can talk about specific ways to do that. And if we had way more time, we'd go through some exercises. When I do live 2-day seminars, we do a lot of role play and a lot of exercises. But you have to figure out what it is they're hungry for. So let me go back to this example of the guy in New York. I had the option to not respond to him because he was being a jerk. I could have just kicked him out of the class. I could have just punched him in the throat. I didn't do either one of those things.
But you did respond.
But I did respond. I have to respond.
Yes, you do.
Because to not respond denies him the respect that this is real, right?
That is true.
I will tell you that when I responded, and I'll describe that in the next sentence segment, I'll talk about how that response changed the tone of the entire situation.
Awesome. Be right back.